Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and we are going to begin talking about CRIBL Stream. So CRIBL is a company that makes a lot of different applications that are great for managing and doing event-based management. But we're going to specifically be talking about Stream in this video and how to set up, configure a lot of the basics and how we can utilize it in any environment, including a home lab or enterprise production setups. So the way that log forwarding and management works is you typically have Linux machines, Windows machines, and you want to get those logs to a SIEM, to a data lake, and someplace you can collect them and hold them and search them and do whatever you want to do with them. So CRIBL Stream makes that easy, but it also provides a lot of other capabilities. So you can observe your logs and you can start making changes as they're being transitioned and moved from one point to another. And by doing that, you can strip out data you don't need. You can redact data that might have sensitive information. So if you're sending it to third-party auditors in some cases, you can clean it and send stuff that will not be breaking compliance. So it has a lot of flexibility, but the nice thing about all this is it's all based in a GUI. So you can log in from your web browser and start making changes and do some modifications. So you don't have to do it by command line, like we've been doing it with like Logstash. If you've worked with Logstash, CRIBL, in a sense, in my opinion, mimics a lot of the functionality and features of Logstash, but it has a nicer GUI and it's got better performance from what I've noticed when I started deploying it. In fact, I've actually migrated my environment from Logstash to CRIBL Stream, and that's how I'm doing a lot of my data management now. And by doing that, I send my logs in, I'm removing a lot of the data, the event types, the fields that I do not care about, I do not need, and then I'm also parsing them, and then once I've parsed them, I'm taking IP addresses and I'm tagging them with the GeoIP location. I'm also tagging logs as required so that I can find them better when I'm searching if I wanted to do something like a category to them. I'm also, as I parse them, I'm taking a lot of the firewall rule ideas, which is a big string of A, B, C, D, 1 through 9, and I'm taking that and using a file to do a compare, and I'm just replacing that data. So when it shows up in my SIEM, in this case, Sentinel, Splunk, and an Elk stack, I can see the firewall rule that the traffic is associated to, which makes it a lot easier for me to know where is this coming from. And that is one of the nice things that Stream does, and we're going to go over that as well. So going over the event model, we have the sources are coming in, and then we have the ability to do pre-processing pipelines before we begin doing the routing and other processing pipelines. And then we do a post right before we send it to the destination. So CRIBL has a bunch of built-in modules that let you pull and push data. And also you can set up the TCP port as well. You can do UDP, and it has the ability to take pretty much any type of source you want and then pipe it in and then send it to a destination. Now, the way I like to set my configuration up is I have a bunch of different sources. So I have one for auditd, I've got one for Suricata, I have some that are just Linux syslog in general. My firewalls have a syslog general that they go to as well. I also have it broken up to have my syslog debug logs go to a completely different source. So as they come into my CRIBL Stream, they're already being split up into different locations, which makes parsing and processing, in my opinion, a lot easier as I already have them defined as what they are. And once that happens, they can come in and I'm going to hit them with the pre-processing. And I call these my cleaning pipes. These are the pipelines that I remove the fields I don't want, and I begin cleaning the data up. And if it's a JSON file, let me parse that out. If it's a delimiter, let me do it whether it's a comma, an equal sign, whatever the case might be. I'm going to take that and I'm going to clean it up and have it all parsed out. So now it's going to move into the routes and the processing. And then this is where I like to do the GeoIP tagging and other data manipulation now that I have everything in its own field and column. So it makes it really easy to make my changes and do what I want to do with it. And then when it comes to the post, this is where I define the data and make sure that it is in the correct format. that the destination wants to receive. So maybe I want to put it into JSON, or maybe I want to remove, this data from it. Well, I have the ability to do that. And this is also a great time to maybe do the redaction of where you want to remove whatever sensitive data could be in the logs as well. So this is where I typically would do that. So each stage has its own purpose, which lets me break out my configuration and management so that it's, in my opinion, easier to manage and monitor. And if I want to do something, I know where to go find it instead of trying to figure out which pipeline could this be. So that's kind of like how I like to do it. Now, in terms of downloading, it is free. It's really cheap. So you can use it in your home lab. You can use it as like a small business, play around with it. I do recommend upgrading to the enterprise licensing, because as you scale and grow up, the flexibility that come with that, having worker nodes and being able to break out your infrastructure into like different, satellite offices or whatever the case might be, is really beneficial. So I highly recommend, if you really do like the product, that you upgrade to the enterprise license, because there's a lot of other flexibility and features that come with that as well. Otherwise, you can download, get it for free. You can choose whichever one you want to do. I like running it on Linux, but you also can always get the Edge app as well if you would like. The Edge app is basically a slimmed down version of Stream. It's more of like an endpoint solution where you can pull the metrics for the local endpoint, and you can also still do some of the log source and destination. So it's kind of like dropping an agent on a machine, and then you can take those logs and then ship them off as well if you really want to just throw it on an endpoint. So it has that capability as well. So both products have their use case scenarios. And right here you can see that we can do up to 1 terabyte a day, and you can also have up to 100 nodes on Edge. And I will say that is a lot. The likelihood of anyone in a small environment reaching that is probably not going to happen. Even with all the machines I have spun up, I'm not even close to even 100 machines, so we're fine on that. So what I have here is a Linux machine. And this Linux machine I have hosted up in the cloud, and I'm going to use this as my online point to start sending in logs from my honeypot collectors that are doing a lot of the threat hunting, and I'm going to send the logs to this machine and have them come through my CRIBL instance, in this case Stream, and then I'm going to clean them up, and then I'm going to send them to my Sentinel environment, and from there I'm going to take that data and I'm going to play around with it. I'm going to build some dashes. I'm going to look at it in Sentinel and see what I can do about taking that data and applying it to my rules, my analytics, and seeing if I can do some better threat hunting with what I found. And also, I kind of like Sentinel, so I think it's going to be a nice way just to play with things. It'll be a fun little project, and we're going to talk more about that as we do more videos. So the first thing we want to do is go here, and let's go ahead and grab the download and install. We can just do the copy, and we will paste this. And we found a bug. Oh, oops. The joys of copy and pasting. Okay, so installation is pretty simple. We're just going to download it, and then we're going to run it. So if we do this, we can see. And the nice thing too about when you do the installation of this is you can switch between all the different modes. So the entire package is always downloaded, and you can always switch from Stream to Edge. You can also switch into leader mode as well if you have the licensing for that. But every mode is connected and built in, so there's no reason to download a separate package if you want to change what type it is. So we're going to go ahead and do Ben. Now we're receiving Ben, and then we're going to do CRIBL, and I'm going to set the mode to single. I believe that is what we want to do, mode single. And then we want to do a start. You can also, once you play around with it, you can always do an enable, and it'll boot up automatically. Okay, let's take a look here, and we do have it. Let me get the IP address. Oops. And now we can log into it. I believe it's going to be port 9000 is the default one. So 45.128.53.90, and we're going to do 9000. Yep, okay, there we go. And let's see, if I remember correctly, I think yep, it's admin. And I'm just going to go ahead and license this. Say yes, register. And there's the goat. And if you don't know already, they like goats, so there's a lot of goat memes and everything is in some way related to goats. It's kind of cool. Alright, so this is what it's going to look like when it first comes up. We have the data sources. So as you can see, we have your collectors, we have your pushes, which is where you're going to be pushing the data into stream, and then we have the pool. And this is where you're going to have stream go out and fetch the data and then pull it back in. So if you really want to be able to send in your Office logs instead of having them go directly to Sentinel, you can connect them directly and pull them in this way. It also has the system and internal, so we can bring in the app scope, we can bring in system metrics, system information, and pipe that in as well. Generally, I use syslog push the most, and we'll go through on how to set that up as well. And then we have destinations, and then these are all the different destinations that are built in. And you can also do things like TCP JSON, so you have flexibility to do other things that may not actually be built into the managed destinations. The other thing too that you have is we have DevNull. If you just want to send something and black hole it because you're not ready to send that data in, you have too much data coming in and it's going to overrun your billing cycle, you have the ability to black hole data if you would like to. Moving on, so we do have the data routes. We will talk more about this later, but this is how you're going to route your data, and you can do that based on tags and what's in your data. We also have the quick connect, and this is where you can add your sources and you can drag directly to your destinations on the source. And we can, let me just do something internally. So I'm just going to select this one, and I'm going to take the metrics. So I'm going to enable the metrics. I'm going to click the metrics and say, yes, I'm going to use this in Quick Connect. And I'm just going to say, okay, cool. Let's send the Quick Connect to default. So we have three different modes. We can do pass-through, pipeline, and pack. Pass-through is what it is. It just sends the data straight to the destination. Pipeline, if you have a pipeline, we want to do some data manipulation, you can attach that, and then it'll send it straight to the destination. And then pack is a collection of pipelines, knowledge articles, things that will take the data, manipulate it, parse it, and do a lot of the heavy lifting, so you don't have to go through and do that as well. So some sources come with that within the CRIBL community that people have built or CRIBL's built, so you can use those for different types of log types. So the one thing to keep in mind is, like, once you do a quick connect, you no longer have the capability of using the routing engine, which has the ability to do much more advanced routing. So if you just really want to send something to a destination, it's real quick and simple this way. But if you really want to get more advanced and determining like routing based on what comes to the logs, then you're going to want to use the data routes as well. But generally speaking, Quick Connect will get you up and running real fast and easy. So there's really not much you have to do. So we also have monitoring. We have the ability to see events per second, ins and outs, really nice. We can also drill down into the sources as well. And if I bring my instance up over here, where'd it go? Here we go. All right, so I have it in dark mode. So you do have different color modes you can choose from. And if I go to my data and my sources, let me go to my syslog. And you can see that I've got all my sources broken up based on the log type. So VMware is its own type. My OpenSense is split up into the actual firewall connection logs, and I have it broken up into like the audit logs and anything else the firewall decides to do. And then I also have the Suricata as its own log type as well. Syslog has also been broken up, same concept. The reason I like to do this is I think it gives me more flexibility. It gives me the ability to better monitor my log intake, what's happening. And if I go to monitoring and I go to sources, I can do enabled. And if I look at this, I can now see my events per second and my bytes per second for each of the different source types. And this lets me see, what's happening. Do I have a lot of events coming in? Do I not have a lot of events coming in? Did I lose a source because there's no events coming in? So breaking it up, in my opinion, gives me more visibility, more control. And that's just kind of like my feeling, especially when you have all these different ports that you can use for your different sources. You can't do that in the cloud instance, so that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be doing cloud or on-prem. Just keep that in mind, that you're limited on the amount of ports that you can actually use when you're like using the cloud version. But otherwise, we can look at, let's do it by pipeline. So I'm going to do enabled. I'm going to do all of them. And now I can see my events per second, and I can see my events per second going out. So what does this mean? This lets me see the amount of data that I'm cleaning, the amount of data that I'm reducing and I'm not sending out into my different SIEMs. So this here is my cleaning of syslog. So all my syslog, all the general syslogs are coming in to this source point. And then I'm doing my cleaning on those event logs. And then I'm looking at my output. I'm dropping it by about half. So that just means that if I was to use 1 meg, I'm probably going to be using 500K when it goes to the SIEM. So that can definitely add up as you start multiplying that out, do the math. You can see where you can start getting cost savings when you start cleaning your logs up and reducing the amount of data that you don't need. I mean, look at the CRIBL metrics, the big difference, really big savings in that. So this is what I really like about CRIBL, is it lets you see in a really nice way your data. The visualization is really nice. And you can do that with destinations too. You can look at your destinations, how many events are going into that destination. We also have the ability, we can change the time. So it's really, really nice. And if we go to sources, let me go back to home, data, sources, and I'm going to go to, let's see, do VMware. It's always doing something, right? I can look at live data. So I'm going to do stop, I'm going to do a capture, and I can look at my data at a very specific point in time. I can look at it, before the routes, before it hits the pre-processing to look at the actual raw data that's coming in. I can look at it after I've done my pre. I can look at it before I do my post and after the routes, and then I can also do it right before the destination. Now my favorite is I like to do right before the destination to see what the logs are going to look like when they go to the destination. That's what I really like to do as well. But I also like to use the before pre-processing to look at the data and see what is it coming in as. Do I like it? What can I change about it? What needs to be changed about it? How can I parse it out? And then after I do my parsing, I can look at it after the pre-processing and look at how my parsing has been done. So I'm just going to click this and do a start. And let's see if we have any VMware logs. And I'm not quite sure if it's really chatty. Maybe you can filter it out here. All right, let me grab another one. Let me do my OpenSense. This one's always got a lot coming in. So we can also look at live data and see, here we go, that we have a lot coming in. And it's a great way of just looking at the data. You can also filter out the fields. So when you start doing parsing and you change the field names and all that, you can see them pop up here. So yeah, that's how you can manage and maintain the data. Really useful, really helpful, really nice. Let me just open up Suricata here. So this is how you would define your pre-processing. You have the connect destinations. We're doing by SIEM by routes. Let me go to my routes here. Let me do do data routes. And this is my open firewall. So I'm now sending it to the pipeline geotagging. This is when I do my geotagging. And then this is my output. And this is where it's all coming in. So it's coming in, it's going straight to that pipeline. So if I go processing pipelines, I have all my pipelines. The other nice thing too is you can see your ins and outs of the pipeline data, which is also really nice to see see how many logs you're saving. And you can see that my syslog general is saving a bunch of logs, which is nice. So let me go back to I want to do the actual GLIP tagging. Here we go. Naming conventions, I like to do pre and then post. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but as you start getting a lot more pipelines, you might want to come up with a naming convention. If you see, like when it comes to like the inputs, they always begin with in, and when they begin out, you kind of do the same thing with the out. So however you want to do it, I would find a standard and format and just stick with it. That's what I've been trying to do. But if we look at the GLIP tagging, we can open up the different sections, and you can see like, okay, cool. Let me load the database. Let me do the fields. And then I'm just going to strip out the fields I do not need. So I'm basically removing anything GLIP because it has all the different languages in there. And then I'm going to add the ones that I want to keep. So that's something else to keep in mind too, is when you start injecting or modifying the data, keep in mind that text adds up. And if it's a lot of text and you have a lot of logs, you do the math, it's going to multiply quite a bit, and it's going to run up your cost in terms of whatever SIEM environment you're doing. So always keep that in mind when you start attaching and modifying data, because sometimes you may not think about it. And then also I always like to use the final on the routing, and that just basically sends the data. It stops going down the pipeline. I find that really nice. But that's basically the rundown of Stream in a nutshell. So I'm going to go ahead and close the video because I know that was quite a bit, and then we'll be doing some other videos on actually getting the data in step by step from some of the honeypots. So that's going to be the next video that comes up after this, and we will actually do the specific configurations from that. So thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, give me your feedback, and don't forget to share the video around.